The 17 News at Sunrise podcast is brought to you by Clinica Sierra Vista.
Welcome back to the 17 News at Sunrise podcast, where we share your news on your schedule.
Working in the spirit of the Golden Empire, this is 17 News at Sunrise.
Good morning to you here at 5 a.m. It is finally Friday. My name is Maddie Jansen alongside Alex Fisher.
We begin this morning with a live look at the U.S. Capitol, where a primetime hearing was held last night to unveil new evidence and video footage on what happened January 6, 2021. The hearing included testimony from a Capitol police officer recounting war-level combat and slipping on her colleague's blood, a situation she likened to a battle zone. Former President Donald Trump continues his assertion on his social media platform that the 2020 election was stolen and that the hearing only showed negative witness accounts and footage. NBC's Bree Jackson is on Capitol Hill this morning with more on last night's shocking testimonies.
Be advised, there's probably about 300 Proud Boys. They're marching eastbound.
Never before seen video from January 6th. An eye-opening look at what happened that day.
Carnage, it was chaos.
Capitol Police Officer Carolyn Edwards was seriously injured. She was one of the witnesses during the first public hearing of the committee investigating the attack.
I just remember that moment of stepping behind the line and just seeing the absolute war zone that the West Front had become.
This British documentary filmmaker followed a far-right extremist group.
I documented the crowd turn from protesters to rioters to insurrectionists.
Committee members say this is all part of their effort to lay out events leading to the violent siege.
We can't sweep what happened under the rug. The American people deserve answers.
They say former President Trump stoked anger among supporters and encouraged the storming of the Capitol, feeding the lie that the 2020 election was stolen. Former Attorney General William Barr told the committee he assured Trump that was false.
I told the president it was.
Trump's daughter Ivanka backed Barr.
It affected my perspective. I respect Attorney General Barr, so I accepted what he was saying.
Many Republicans dismissed the committee's work as political theater.
This hearing is not about solutions. It's about trying to blame President Trump in a fashion to change the outcome of the midterms.
Tonight, I say this to my Republican colleagues who are defending the indefensible. There will come a day when Donald Trump is gone, but your dishonor will remain.
This is the first of several hearings uncovering what happened on January 6th and the former president's role. This was the first of at least 6 public hearings. The next hearing is scheduled for Monday morning. In Washington, I'm Bree Jackson for NBC News.
While we heard from many people during last night's hearing, one person we did not hear from was Bakersfield Congressman Kevin McCarthy. But he did speak about the investigation ahead of last night's hearing. 17's Maddie Gannon has more.
One interview the panel considers central to the investigation doesn't look likely to happen. That's with Bakersfield's own Kevin McCarthy.
The Select Committee to investigate the January 6th attack.
The January 6th panel holding its first public hearing.
Good morning.
Bakersfield Congressman Kevin McCarthy, a figure the committee considers key to the investigation, making it clear he won't participate.
Speaker Pelosi's Select Committee on January 6th is unlike any other committee in American history. In fact, it is the most political and least legitimate committee in American history.
But the House Minority Leader's opinion on investigating the Capitol attack wasn't always this way. In the days fresh off the attack, McCarthy took a central role in calling for the events to be looked into.
I support a bipartisan commission to get all the facts of what took place that day.
It was after Democratic House Speaker Nancy Pelosi rejected 2 of McCarthy's GOP picks to sit on the panel that his opinion started to change.
Pelosi has broken this institution.
Then in January, McCarthy declined the panel's request to speak before the committee about his communication with former President Donald Trump that day.
Maybe if Nancy Pelosi had done what other speakers would do and not play politics with it, there could have been a different answer.
Since then came audio recordings of McCarthy on calls with GOP leadership after the riot, shedding more light on the House Minority Leader's perspective that day.
The country is too crazy. I do not want to look back and think we caused something or we missed something and someone got hurt. I don't want to play politics with any of that.
It all led up to McCarthy receiving an official subpoena from the committee in May.
You know, I haven't put any real thought to the subpoena.
This time, McCarthy's lawyer sending a letter to the panel, arguing it's not valid because it doesn't have 13 members or 5 Republicans and doesn't serve a legitimate legislative purpose. In the first hearing, Representative Liz Cheney mentioned McCarthy by name.
You will hear that leaders on Capitol Hill begged the president for help, including Republican leader McCarthy, who was, quote, scared, and called multiple members of President Trump's family after he could not persuade the president himself.
In the first hearing, the panel laid out how, in their view, the former president's claim the 2020 election was stolen from him laid the groundwork for January 6th. Maddie Gannon, 17 News.
Our time now is 5:08, and we now know the name of one of the victims shot and killed at a veterans home in Oildale earlier this week. Just before 9 a.m. on Tuesday, staff at the California Veterans Assistance Foundation found 2 residents dead at the apartment complex on Decatur Street. The Kern County coroner has identified one of the victims as 63-year-old Timothy Blevins. The second victim was 62 years old. His name has not yet been released. Meantime, we've learned deputies arrested Guadalupe Mojica on his 80th birthday. He was charged with 2 counts of first-degree murder and is being held without bail. Mojica is due in court later today.
Your time is 5:09. A Bakersfield man has been convicted of 45 felony charges related to pornography and sex acts with a minor. According to the Kern County District Attorney's Office, Joshua Knight faces a sentence of 865 years to life in prison. During parole searches of his home in 2020 and 2021, agents say they found more than 30 videos on several electronic devices that showed minors being sexually assaulted. Knight's sentencing is set for July 19th. And a trial date's been set for former McFarland High basketball coach Fernando Pineda. The 40-year-old was arrested in a November online sting operation in which he planned to meet someone he believed was a 14-year-old boy for sex, according to court filings. His trial is set to begin July 25th. Pineda pleaded no contest in October 2020 to contacting a minor to commit a sexual offense. He was sentenced to 2 years in prison in order to register as a sex offender.
Law enforcement and local leaders will come together today for a panel on illegal street racing. Officials say incidents are on the rise with deadly consequences. 17's Chris Burton is in studio this morning to explain. Good morning, Chris.
Alex, good morning. Assemblyman Vince Fong has been outspoken about the dangers of street racing, championing Assembly Bill 3, which increases the penalties for racing-related activities. He will headline the panel this morning that also consists of Mayor Karen Go and all 3 of Kern's law enforcement agencies. The California Highway Patrol says street racing has increased sharply since the beginning of the pandemic, and here in Bakersfield, those contests have often turned deadly, like this crash that killed mother Maria Navarro, and this one you'll see in a moment earlier this year that killed 19-year-old Bianca Flores.
You can hear it all night, engines revving and people peeling out and stuff. That's extremely unfortunate. Someone got to lose their life over racing.
Last month, as you can see here, more than 300 cars blocked intersections across Bakersfield for vehicle stunts. The group says they want to prevent stunts like these, which can lead to street racing. Well, the panel starts at 10 a.m. this morning at Bakersfield Police Headquarters on Truxton Avenue. In studio, Chris Burton, 17 News.
All right, Chris, thanks so much. 5:34 is our time now, and we turn to the tragedy in Uvalde. Texas lawmakers have begun their investigation into the shooting, promising answers and action.
As the national debate over gun reform continues, while survivors in the small town struggle with what comes next. Jay Gray has the latest.
It's been just over 2 weeks since the killing spree at Robb Elementary. Still, the deadly gunshots. The tears of the shocked and shattered community echo inside the halls of Congress.
The only clue as their identities was a blood-splattered cartoon clothes still clinging to them.
And today at the Texas State Capitol,
the people of Uvalde and the entire state of Texas deserve the facts and answers.
lawmakers opening their investigation into the mass shooting in Uvalde, trying to find out how it happened and make sure it never happens again.
We have a duty to do what we can because our children's lives are on the line.
One of the children from the attack sharing with members of Congress how she survived.
He shot my friend that was next to me, and I thought he was going to come back to the room, so I grabbed the blood and put it all over me.
And while Washington again debates gun laws and Austin searches for answers, back in Uvalde,
we are reading all is well.
They're trying to figure out how to push through the overwhelming loss and unbearable pain. Jay Gray, NBC News.
Meantime, disturbing new details and documents obtained by the New York Times. It shows more than a dozen students remained alive for more than an hour before officers entered their classrooms. The Uvalde police commander says he feared a risk to his officers' lives. The documents also show that the officers were waiting for more protective gear before confronting the gunman. This decision came despite knowing that there were a handful of students who needed immediate medical attention but were trapped in 2 classrooms with the gunman. Now to an update on the military helicopter crash that killed several Marines earlier this week. We've learned a 5th person has died of injuries suffered in the crash Wednesday near the town of Glamis in Imperial County. Investigators say the aircraft, an MV-22B Osprey, was on a training mission when it suddenly crashed around noon. The victims were part of the 3rd Marine Aircraft Wing, an aviation unit of the United States Marine Corps. Military officials called the crash a mishap, but released few other details about what actually led to the crash. Aviation experts are raising concerns about Ospreys, saying the plane has a higher crash rate than others. At least 46 people, almost all of them Marines, have been killed in Osprey crashes since 2000.
And out of the crisis at the southern border, with a record number of migrants crossing into the U.S., NBC News has learned the Biden administration is now planning to bus migrants to cities across America, including Los Angeles. Julia Ainsley reports from Texas.
We're with the U.S. Border Patrol near El Paso, where agents tell us migrant crossings are nonstop. They find this group of men from Brazil and Mexico. Here along the border between Juarez and New Mexico, border agents say they're already seeing numbers of migrants crossing that's expected to surpass last year's record high. What that means is the need to quickly process and move migrants out of this area is more critical than ever. Last month, there were over 234,000 illegal border crossings, the highest monthly total ever recorded. Even with the COVID border restriction known as Title 42 still in place, the majority of those migrants were released into the U.S. The number's so high, agents are doing what they call street releases in El Paso.
As we had reached capacity here, we were over 3,500. When we took them to the bus station,
the Biden administration is considering another controversial change. According to internal documents obtained by NBC News, DHS is planning to use federal funds to bus migrants to shelters in cities far from the border, beginning with Los Angeles and later Albuquerque, Dallas, Houston, and others soon. A senior DHS official says it's a contingency plan to alleviate overcrowding.
It is a crisis.
El Paso County Judge Ricardo Samaniego is critical of the Biden administration's border policies, worrying about what happens when Title 42 is lifted.
You have more coming across. We don't have the volunteers. The flights are not going at the way they should. We'll have the perfect storm.
At the Annunciation House shelter in El Paso, we met Jimena, who didn't want to show her face, telling us she and her son fled Colombia and were even kidnapped. It was worth the risk, she said.
In your 17 Crime Watch this morning, a man is under arrest following a short chase in East Bakersfield that ended with a huge law enforcement presence. According to Bakersfield police, it started yesterday as a traffic stop and turned into a brief pursuit that ended at Union Avenue near 7th Street. The suspect was arrested, and police say he had weapons and drugs. Our cameras captured not only BPD and probation officers, but officers with HSI, or Homeland Security investigators. It's unclear if the suspect was wanted for other charges.
5:40 now, and we're learning more about another high-speed chase that began in San Luis Obispo but ended in Kern County. When deputies finally caught up with the men, they say one of them was dead. Wednesday evening, deputies tried to stop a vehicle related to a carjacking and armed robbery in Anaheim. The car was also connected to a homicide from Sunday in Santa Barbara County. Deputies say the driver led officers on a chase through Paso Robles, eventually ending on Highway 46 near Kex Road when the suspects ran from the car into an orchard. A sheriff's canine handler spotted the suspects trying to hide near a canal. Deputies arrested one suspect who was later booked into juvenile hall. But as they approached the second suspect, the sheriff's office said they found him dead from a gunshot wound and a handgun found nearby. The sheriff's office says deputies did not fire their weapons during this incident. A homicide investigation is now underway.
5:41 is our time now, and Flag Day is next week, June 14th. And we are inviting you to drop off your torn, worn, and faded flags here at KGET.
When you do so, the young Marines will then retire the flags appropriately. Here's a look at all the flags we've received so far. Just surrender your old flags here at our studios at the corner of 22nd and L Streets during normal business hours. We'll be collecting them again through Flag Day, which is next Tuesday.
Working in the spirit of the Golden Empire, this is 17 News at Sunrise.
The 17 News at Sunrise podcast is a production of KGET and Nexstar Media Group. For more on all of the headlines in today's show, head to kget.com.